Okay, I'm Paul Rabideau, and this is our third lecture on emotional intelligence. And we had just talked about skills needed to regulate emotions, and really we are talking about how our executive function, how the cortex out here, this big cortex that we humans have, can influence the limbic system and regulate those emotions that could be so useful to us in living the Christian life. So we don't want to ignore those. We want to make use of them. And I believe that these emotions, these were God's idea for us to live more godly. So another approach to this regulation, we're talking here about like how to regulate, is maybe ask questions. When we're in a situation and maybe it's emotionally charged, what kind of questions can we ask ourselves? Pause and ask questions. What would be helpful?
Why am I feeling this way?
Right. Yeah, okay. Maybe what am I feeling and why am I feeling? What's triggered me here? Okay. Yeah. That's a big question. That's a really big question. And the word trigger is important because often I see, and I think you see, that somebody's reaction to something is much bigger than you expected. It's surprising. Like, why did she get so upset? And I think it's good to notice that. Notice when you're surprised, when something doesn't seem to fit, or it's out of proportion. One time at church, a young man, high school or younger maybe, said, how was your vacation? They went to Disney. How was your? Something really bad happened. And I asked him, my aunt died. And I asked his dad about it later, and he said, we didn't actually even know her. We maybe met her a couple of times. So then, I realized that this is a out of proportion reaction, and what's true is his mother died when he was 4, and now he's 14, right? And and this is his mother's sister, right? So he's still grieving the loss of his mother. Something really bad happened. Well, it was bad for some, but not technically for him. Except it triggered the grief for his mother. So what am I feeling right now, and why might I be feeling that? And does it have anything to do with the current situation? Right? That would really be intelligent, right? If you can do that emotionally, is be aware that you are being triggered, or be aware that the other person is being triggered. And it's not really about what's happening here, it's about something bigger that happened in the past, right? Okay, that's a good question. Any other questions that in the moment you can ask yourself when emotions start running?
Am I perceiving this situation congruently or congruently?
Okay, so am I perceiving? We talked about perspective, and am I perceiving it congruently? Right? What do you mean by that?
Is what my brain or my emotions telling me what is actually happening?
Yeah.
Or congruent with what's actually happening?
Okay. Yes. So is this really connected well in that way? Is my reaction congruent, or is their reaction? And we're going to come back to that example because there was incongruence, and that first I don't want to use drugs, but I love drugs. There's something incongruent there, and that means there must be something else going on that isn't being stated, or maybe not aware of it. Right? Okay, good questions. Okay, I like this question. What's true? What is true right now? Maybe things are happening, there's fear, or there is anger, But what's really true? So, for example, I have a friend who, a good Christian, and he is afraid of, he's afraid of what might happen in the world with the apocalypse and stuff, current events. Either we're in it or it's coming soon, and he's afraid. But he also has a great faith in Jesus, and shares that faith really easily with others. So I think there's, do we need to have that fear? I mean, is what he's believing true? Because I think what's true is that God is in everything, and God has control, and we do not need to fear anything that can be feared. Right? That's what Scripture says, right? So often fear and anxiety come from things that aren't true. So what is true? Wait a minute, right now, what is true? Okay, or what is my goal in this situation? Okay, there's an argument going on. What is my goal? And is my goal furthered, or can I achieve my goal by expressing a lot of emotion right now? And maybe the answer is yes. Jesus had a goal. He wanted to clear the temple and make a point to some others. Right? So I can imagine, he came in, looked around, said, okay, I know what I'm going to do. And he brought a lot of energy to the situation because that's what it required. But other times, that would not help achieve a goal, right? So what is my goal? What am I feeling? We already talked about that, and why. And so that I can ask, what do I want to express right now, verbally and emotionally? What do I want to express? And when I'm sitting with clients and they are weeping or they're rejoicing, and sometimes I would like the option to be able to weep with those who weep and then rejoice with those who rejoice, which is a good thing. What do I want to express right now? So sometimes just pausing and asking a question, it can be, it's the executive function regulating the emotional center, right? But I need a second. I need half a second to do. I need to pause, and maybe it's 2 or 3 seconds to come up with a question, but to either ignite or downregulate the emotional center, so my thinking is working together with my emotions towards some behavior that will help me reach my goal, or establish greater truth in this situation, or something like that, right? Wouldn't it be great? Wouldn't that be great to be able to do that? Okay. What would Jesus do? That's sort of gone out of favor, but that's such a great question. What would he do? And I could read the Gospels, or I could read about David, or I can read about other people who are better or worse at emotional intelligence. I want to make this point too, because it also can help me. That the Bible, the Bible is full of emotion words, okay? And you're going to notice that more now. And it's interesting that the Bible often sets two emotions against each other, okay? So for example, anxiety and gratitude, right? Do not be anxious about anything, but with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. Right? We're going to go deeply into this passage. But it puts against each other these two words: do not be anxious, but be thankful. And there are good neurological reasons why being grateful helps you deal with anxiety, and we'll talk about that later. But it's interesting to notice if I'm feeling anxious, there's something I can do to counter that comes from Scripture. That's a very good advice from Scripture. Or peace be to you, do not fear. Peace and fear are opposites. Okay. You have turned my mourning into gladness. Of course, a sadness and joy are opposites of each other. So, and there's more. There's lots of examples where the Bible sets these in opposition to each other. So that means there is an antidote defined to anxiety, and that's gratitude, and so forth, right? Okay. When I was in this situation of really recognizing that I was just like emotionally stupid, right? So if there's an assessment there, I would be stupid. That's how I come out. And one of the things I thought to do was to just start reading through the Psalms. Okay, I think the purpose, one major purpose of the Psalms, is to teach emotional regulation. Okay, God is our Father. He's a good Father, and good parents teach their children how to respond to emotions, or let's say to events, how to respond to events emotionally. So the child falls and skins her knee and looks up at her mother, like, what should I do? Should I cry? Should I laugh? Should I ignore it? How should I respond emotionally? Parents teach, and if the mom, or the dad is anxious, then the child might learn more about being more anxious herself or himself. So, so I just started reading through the Psalms, and I read 75 Psalms this way. Is the first step is, okay, I'm reading Psalm 13. What are the emotion words? Just maybe the word sad is in it. Okay, sad, got it. Okay, or the word angry somewhere, or in Psalm 73, envy. So just what's the vocabulary? And that's something we're going to work on, is an emotional vocabulary. And so how do you feel right now? I'm happy. Fine. Okay. Those are words, but there's a much richer vocabulary around those kinds of emotions. Okay. So what are the emotion words? There are other words that suggest emotions that aren't using those words: sad, angry, right? But the phrases reflect an emotion. Okay. What are those? And then, what emotions am I experiencing as I read this passage? Right? Okay. And an emotion is a thought plus a bodily sensation. What are my thoughts, and what am I feeling in my body? Okay. So I mean, I guess I was pretty determined to deal with this problem of just being so emotionally unaware that the first time I realized I was upset is I was exploding, right? That's I just can't live like that. So I read through 75 Psalms and did this exercise. I'm going to ask you to do that. With just pick one psalm or any passage of Scripture this week or next, and do this exercise. Okay, you can do that with these psalms if you want. Depression, it's Psalm 10, 13, 22, 31. You may find other emotions, but David in Psalm 13 expressing his depression and how he worked through that. We'll look at that closely later in the week. Or shame and distress, or envying the wicked. Okay, just developing some awareness and ability to regulate that. Because I think what we see with some of these Psalms is the psalmist just states, this is what I'm feeling, Lord. And then the psalmist regulates himself through the process of depression or envy and comes up with a better situation at the end. Right? So you'll see how the psalmist does that. Okay. So, just some scriptures For the grace of God has appeared, training us to live self-controlled lives. Okay, the grace of God is meant to train us to live self-controlled, okay? And this is what we're talking about with regulation. Let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, okay? What does peace feel like? And how do I get more peace? We will talk about that, okay? But let peace rule in my heart and not anxiety or fear. And there are ways of conducting myself with others, like a soft answer turns away wrath. Okay? I'm being attacked at this moment. Can I pause for a half a second or maybe a little bit more and choose a soft answer in order to de-escalate the wrath? Okay? Or am I going to just react and escalate the argument by being harsh myself? Okay? And I have about a half a second or a second. Well, actually, I have as much time as I need, right? I don't have to respond at all. But if I can pause for a second, then the information that came into my limbic system will make it to my cortex, and then I can maybe ask myself a question, what do I really want to have this, happen here? And then choose a response, right? That would be great. That'd be great. Okay, so let's come back to this guy. So drugs have ruined my life. And I love getting high, which is true. He loved getting high. We actually probably all would love getting high, right? I hear that it brings, peace and excitement and stuff like that. And at some level, we would probably all enjoy that. So he loved getting high, and he would be more likely to abuse drugs as a result, right? So there's something incongruent here, as we pointed out, right? So there was something incongruent, and if the statement and his goal is one thing, but what he's feeling is another thing, he's going to be he's double-minded, he's going to be unstable. Why does he love getting high if drugs have ruined his life? So this is another surprising thing, and if I can notice this, and then maybe I can start thinking about it. There's something incongruent. What else is going on? What benefit? There's some benefit the drugs are giving, because there's also because there's a big area of a deficit that the drugs are causing, right? So there must be something else going on. There must be other thoughts that are creating this feeling, like I can't cope without drugs. I can't cope with life without taking drugs. So they give me a benefit, which I like. I mean, I'm afraid of withdrawal, and that is maybe the biggest reason why people have trouble quitting drugs is fear of withdrawal, which for some drugs can be terrible. Okay, I'm afraid of the withdrawal, and so I'd rather get high. I have some social anxiety, and drugs help me to just be more relaxed, so I can just be with people, drugs provide euphoria of some sort, and so there's some other things that he believes are true, and I should notice that when these don't make sense, they're incongruent, then there must be something else going on. These are unhelpful thoughts, okay, incongruent with what he wants. And they need to be, that's what needs to be challenged and changed. And helping him, we can help him with that stuff, right? And so how can he how can he forcibly change his feelings? Okay, a couple of you have asked that question. Drugs have ruined my life, but I can deal with these other things, right? These other thoughts that maybe have not been expressed or he's not even aware of have to be dealt with. And so since the thoughts are coming from, since the feeling is coming from the thoughts, he needs other thoughts to lead him away from, I love getting high, okay, to I hate getting high, okay, and they're less likely to abuse drugs. So in the addiction area, one way of trying to change your feelings by changing your thoughts is something called like running the tape through to the end, right? That could have been one of our could be one of our regulation strategies. Is I'm feeling like, but I love getting high. Well, wait a minute, it's ruined your life. When you say you love getting high, what are you talking about? Well, it helps me with some of these things. Plus, it really feels good, and I'll just drink, or I'll just use marijuana occasionally. Well, but what then happens? Well, I have to be honest. Eventually, I go back to the heroin, and then what happens? Well, it feels good, but you know what? It doesn't feel good for that long anymore. I mean, I don't even really get high anymore. And then I lose my job, and then my family sees I've relapsed, and they don't want to have anything to do with me, and I become isolated, and I'm going to end up under the bridge, running the tape through to the end. Don't just think about that good part at the beginning. Just, well, what really happens? Let's be realistic. What is true? Right? That question. Well, what's true here? And then there's obviously some benefit if somebody does something that abusive to themselves. There's some benefit. But what about everything else? And then you help the person get to a feeling that is really more congruent with the truth, true thoughts, and a feeling congruent with truth. And then now I not only think this, but I have the motivation to pursue it, to do it. And I think that is our best shot at good behavior, at obedience, is I think truth, I think true thoughts, and I supply motivation to pursue the truth through emotions, right? And those emotions may be negative, like I don't want that to happen. I'm not going to pursue that affair. I mean, you might think, oh, that would be fun, but what else would happen? I would lose my family. I would lose my ministry. I would lose my job. Like, you know what? I don't want to have an affair. Okay? Or you can do that with anything where where there may be an incongruency between a thought and a feeling, and bringing the emotions alongside to provide the motivation for better behavior. Aaron was just showing me that I've always been impressed. You travel in Europe and maybe everywhere else in the world, and the cigarette boxes have these big black boxes, white words like, "This will kill you," right? A cigarette box. This, we have these little statements. The Surgeon General has determined, this will kill you. But now I see there's a picture of somebody, I don't know, with a trach or something, and it's intended, and the manufacturers are obliged to put "this will kill you" and show a dead person or something, a dying person, on the box, and that is intended to provide a little bit of truth with a lot of emotion, to motivate a person to not buy this box right now. Right? Okay. So here in this example, this godly anger brings energy, right, to a better behavior. And some of these emotions are really big, but they're full. Their purpose, be angry, but do not sin, because anger brings energy to a situation when it needs energy. Okay? And in the Old Testament, when God was angry, that's why this situation required energy. Okay. So, okay, wouldn't it be great to be able to do that, to be aware of what I'm experiencing right now, and to be able to regulate it, and then to be aware of what's going on between the two of us or what's going on with you, and then be able to regulate that too, okay, for the good, right? So what would be some benefits? What would you imagine are some benefits of being emotionally intelligent? Let's say health benefits. Let's just say health benefits. Yeah.
I think it could just help prevent anxiety. It could help make decisions that are consistent with reality and better quality decisions.
Yep. So it would reduce anxiety, and anxiety or stress create a lot of health problems, especially continuous stress. It creates lots of health problems, and yeah. So, what else?
An obvious answer would be it helps to prevent or break addictions, which can be unhealthy as well.
Yep. Just more control. I mean, addictions are extremely powerful. It is very hard to stop smoking cigarettes. It's the most addictive drug in the world, partly because it's so available. But yeah, it could help with that. So less stress, right? Mental and physical health, okay, including more effective relationships. There's a study that Harvard has been doing for 85 years on health and happiness, and the key to health and happiness are good relationships. Okay, good relationships. So being more emotionally intelligent instead of just being crazy and unstable, having more emotionally intelligent relationships leads to all kinds of health benefits. I'm going to be less reactive, less triggered, more responsive, as we say. I'm going to have control of my life, my emotional life. It's going to be in balance. I'll be a better listener. That'll be one of the skills that we're going to talk about. And I'll be more optimistic, happier, resilient, greater self-esteem, less negative, more purposeful in my life. My cholesterol will be lower. My blood pressure will be lower. Fewer strokes, fewer heart attacks. All of those things that you can imagine as health benefits come from emotional intelligence. I'll have more money. My marriage will be more likely to be successful. You name it. Anything that anybody might call good is made better by this, right? Okay. So let's do it, okay? Let's do this. Okay. So in thinking about this this year, and having created material that we're going to cover in the days ahead, I started thinking about emotional intelligence and sanctification. Okay? That relates to sanctification. Sanctification is about becoming more godly and more holy, more like Jesus, all right? And I found this statement. So a Christlike emotional intelligence matures our faith by fostering single-minded congruence of thought and emotion, okay, which can produce obedience to him, right? So if I want to be obedient, if I want to love Jesus and so obey him and control my behavior, having my thoughts and my feelings aligned, as we just described, that would be important, right? Instead of being an unstable person, double-minded and unstable, right? So what we've been talking about relates to also obedience in the Christian life. So I wonder if we could call this emotional sanctification. Okay. So sanctifying our emotions. Okay, so let me just make this argument. You can buy it or not buy it. Okay, but I started thinking about this. Making our emotions more godly. Emotions can be godly or ungodly, but make them more Christ-like, more godly in the expression of my emotions. And I could do it this way, okay? If I can recognize a negative emotion in me, okay, the Bible says, do not fear, do not be anxious, okay? Or ungodly anger, or depression, which I'm not saying is sinful always, right? Or shame, or false guilt, or a sense of worthlessness. We're going to talk about worthlessness next week. If I notice these negative emotions in me or in someone else, okay, I first need to be aware, right? I recognize that. And you are able to recognize it because you know what it is. And we're going to talk about what it is so that you can recognize it. So I recognize it. And and then I ask, what am I thinking that I'm afraid? Okay, what am I thinking that I'm afraid of, that one of these characters is going to be the Antichrist, and this is all going to, and I'm going to be sent to a FEMA death camp, not far from here, I understand. Why? I'm afraid. Why am I afraid? So identifying the underlying thoughts or beliefs that generate these emotions. There's a meaningful thought. We can call that a belief. A meaningful thought, a belief that is generating this fear. Okay? It may be true or not true, but challenge this belief. Is it true? Okay? What does the Bible say? That we are so fortunate to have a source of truth. And we're going to talk more about the importance of truth in our lives. And I, in particular, all this stuff, especially in election years, and like who's telling the truth, or I don't easily solve those problems in my head. Other people seem really good at it. I don't. So I am so grateful that there is a source of truth. Right? And so I'm feeling a certain way that the Bible says I shouldn't. What is it that I'm thinking that is generating that feeling? And is that thought true? If it's not true, then what is true? Okay? Thinking accurately. Thinking accurately is very important. Okay? Because what I think and what I believe is going to create my emotional life, which is going to have an impact upon me and everybody around me. Right? Okay. And can I experience a new congruent emotion which will feel better? Now, sometimes that emotion may be guilt, and guilt doesn't feel good. It's meant to not feel good, right? But if I am guilty, if it's true I am guilty, then I should feel guilty, but there's something I can do about it. True guilt, if I am guilty, it doesn't feel good, but there's also a cleanness to it, I think. And I can do something about it. I can ask for forgiveness. I can go make it right. Okay, I can receive forgiveness, and I can deal with it. If I'm feeling guilty and it's false, it's based on something false, that really feels terrible, and there's nothing I can do. But I could recognize it and realize that's false, and then think more accurately about what's going on. That wasn't me, that was my parents, think more accurately, and then feel congruent to that. And these congruent thoughts and emotions give us our best shot at change of behavior, right? A new, better, congruent behavior, okay, which could be obedience to God, which creates a good life and reward and sanctification, right? Becoming more Christ-like in my thoughts, and in my emotional life, and in my behaviors, right? So these steps I've described are, at first, awareness. That has to come first, awareness, and then regulation. Okay. And in chapter 4 of Philippians, which we'll look at carefully at the end, Paul says, these things that you've heard from me and seen in me and learned in me, you have to practice these things, because my fallen mind, my heart, which is desperately wicked above all things, is going to fight me on this. And this is not going to be, if this were easy, I don't know what I'd be digging a ditch somewhere, I guess. But it's not easy. So our brains are going to, we have a habit of negative thinking based upon not truth. And those habits are ingrained in our brain, and they can change. Okay, we can change it, but they'll fight you. Okay. So it's true, right? That truth drives sanctification. We know that. So I'm not saying the emotions drive sanctification. Truth drives sanctification, right? Jesus said when he's praying for us, sanctify them in your truth. Your word is truth. Sanctification comes from believing truth, okay? And truth is found in God's word. Sanctification is about becoming more Christ-like, more godly, more holy, and that comes from truth. So we need to acquire truth and believe it so that it's meaningful to us. And Paul says this in Romans 12, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, okay? We need to be transformed by our mind being renewed. And then he goes on to talk about knowing God's will, his perfect will. But it's about our mind. Sanctification is about our mind. And what else would it be about? It's not about my body becoming more Christ-like. It's about my mind. And in my mind are things I believe and the emotions I feel as a result. And then I do something driven by what my brain tells me to do. Right? Okay. And we sometimes the Bible will use the word heart. Okay. To include our will and our emotions and how we think, and there may be other words, okay? I like the way the NLT renders this. Don't copy the behavior and customs of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think, right? That is what sanctification is, right? Okay? So sanctified thinking will drive, I'll say, sanctified emotions, okay, emotions that are more Christ-like, and that's what I mean by sanctification. More Christ-like thinking will drive more Christ-like emotions, which will support more Christ-like behavior. This is a good book. I would recommend it. It's not edited very well. There are no footnotes, and I don't know. But a lot of interesting thoughts, a lot of really interesting thoughts. Our goal is to have a sanctified and transformational set of beliefs that give us the emotions that make us whole Christians and empower service behavior in the kingdom. Okay? So that's where I've come around to being interested in emotions what they are, just being clear on what they are. So what is joy? What is it exactly? So then I can know how to have more. And what does the Bible say about having more? I mean, it's pretty clear. And so now maybe I can have more joy, and maybe I can have less anxiety, and maybe I can have better anger or godly anger. And then it runs it backwards. But if I know how to, I will know how to regulate those emotions and be aware of them if I understand them, and that they're driven by what I believe, and what I believe, that's what sanctification is about. And so, but the emotions come in the package, and they help me to behave better. They're the there are people, and myself included, 30 years ago, who just thought these the emotions are a problem, and they get in the way of my thinking and my doing. Turns out they can be paired with thinking, and they're the engine behind doing. Okay? Because very few of us will think something and do it. We need some motivation as well. And just taking this one example here, Christlike emotional intelligence. So what happened? It's called zeal, okay? So zeal in the temple. What was happening? So the merchants were buying and selling, called robbers, because people are coming from a distance. They're not bringing their sheep, they're bringing their money. They first have to exchange their money, and then they at inflated rates, and then they buy an inflation priced sheep, and they were robbers. Okay, I was going to buy a sandwich in the Newark airport on the way here. This little sandwich, it was $16. I said, I'm not going to eat. I'm not going to buy that. So you're there, and they're robbers, right? So the merchants are buying and selling in a holy place, right? And they're taking advantage of the people, the pilgrims who are coming, and even vulnerable people. And God has a heart for vulnerable people. So the blind and the lame, and that's what's happening. The chief priests and the scribes, when they saw the wonderful things he did and the children praising him, they were indignant. Okay. So that's what's happening. And what did Jesus do? So I like watching dramatized gospel and Bible episodes, because the director has to make a choice about, well, what is Jesus going to look like right before this all happens. But what he did is as we know, he overturned the tables, poured out the money, and he mixed, I like this, he mixed the money of the money changers. This guy's money and that guy's money are mixed together. What a chaos that is. And the chairs, and started a stampede of animals. He acted assertively, right? Sometimes in a group, we're talking about anger. I'll ask, I guess I won't be able to do this coming up, but I'll ask, did Jesus ever lose his temper? And I think the answer is no. He never lost anything, right? He never lost control of himself. He acted assertively, right? He wasn't in a rage, right? And he maintained control, and he brought energy to a situation that required it, right? And this needed quick attention. And his anger, called zeal, was this situation. A lot of people, one person, it required energy, a lot of energy from that person, from Jesus. And while he did it, he was talking to people, right? So he was in control of himself. He taught the people who were astonished at him. They didn't fear him. They were just watching and listening to him too. So this is really emotionally intelligent. And Jesus used anger to accomplish a purpose. There was evil happening, and he brought energy to it. Okay? And so yeah, I think this is a great example. There are other great examples that we'll look at as we go through other emotions, but I would like you to think about that too. Okay. So as we wrap this up, this last session this morning, a couple of books. The one on the right is written by a Christian guy, and lots of ideas, too many ideas, I think, but lots of interesting ideas. The one on the left is Daniel Goleman. He got it all started in the mid-'90s, emotional intelligence, why it might matter more than IQ for success in life. And so there's a lot of books out there, and you could just pick a more recent one if you want to dig more into this. The book that you have, the one in the middle, used to look like this, so maybe you could find this used also in Barnes & Noble for $4 or something like that, or probably not used, but it's a short book, and the first half of it I think you should read, and has lots of ideas in there to help you understand emotional intelligence. Right? And there are 100 more books. So before I just talk about things I'd like you to do these couple of weeks, are there any more questions? Any questions about what I've talked about this morning?
I have one.
Yeah.
So with what you just talked about with anger, in Jesus' anger.
Yep.
So are you suggesting that Jesus used his anger to help him to be assertive, and that's the model that you're suggesting it can be good?
I'll say yes. Okay, he did it, so I guess it was okay, and I think that what's important to see in there, and there's evidence of it, is that he wasn't out of control, and there we can think of like there's assertive, but then there's aggressive, and I think that's too much. But he saw that there was something wrong, and it was going to. Let's say if it was a smaller situation, maybe he could have stepped into it and said, guys, this really isn't right. You take it outside and charge. You're abusing these people. That could have worked, right? But I think it was a very big situation, or there's lots of people there, and it was going to require more energy. And so, anger. I think the role of anger in our lives is when something requires energy. Anger brings energy. And so we're going to talk about anger, what godly anger and what ungodly anger looks like. And if we can be aware of the difference between those two in ourselves, then maybe we can make a choice like Jesus did. I mean, he must have been upset in seeing that situation, and he must have calculated that in order to change this, I need to bring energy. But in that episode, he's also talking to people. So he's in control of himself. And those people evidently were not afraid of him because he wasn't directing his energy at them. So evidently that is a choice, that is an option. But you have to really understand what godly anger looks like. And we'll talk about that. Yeah. Okay. So let me propose some assignments. That reading the first part of that book, maybe it's 100 pages, will give you more information about emotional intelligence. And it's not written by a Christian, but it's a good, concise treating of that subject. we talked about reading a psalm or reading a psalm and doing it according to that pattern, which I'll make that available to you, of reading a psalm and looking for the emotions, including, which is the hardest part. And we start easy with what's the vocabulary, or where else are emotions being expressed, even if they don't use emotion words, and then what am I feeling? And just trying to be sensitive to that. And the emotion, that means there's things happening in my body, maybe in my arms or my torso, my back, my neck or something, maybe my legs, my feet. What's happening when I say, my God, why have you forsaken me? Right? I do not believe that God has forsaken me, but saying, my God, why have you forsaken me, is giving me an unpleasant sensation right here. Before, it was pleasant, right? When I said, I love my wife. Yeah, that's better. So just being aware that that's happening to me, because those are clues to what's going on in me. That my body, God designed us this way. These are alarms that are going off. And do I hear the alarms or do I not? And I want to learn how to hear the alarms when they go off. Right? Good or bad, right? Or positive or negative, we say. Help me build my catalog of emotional intelligence examples from the Bible. Right? Identify an episode in Scripture that illustrates either good example of EI or a bad example. Okay, and share that with me. Yeah. And I'm going to give you as we go through these next couple of weeks, and we talk about burnout and anxiety and depression. I have inventories where you can just fill this out and just see, am I burned out? Okay, but it's a good exercise to you also learn more about, well, what is depression from these kind of inventories, and then maybe there's something in there that you see in yourself that you weren't aware of. Okay, so those are the things that I will share with you. Okay, thank you very much.